Hey, sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to BBallBreakdown. I am pleased to be part of the AMA on the NBA Reddit page. Always a great place to have a great conversation there, and I apologize for not being there enough. I'm really going to make a concerted effort. I say this every year, but I can't get over how great the conversation is there, and you guys are really smart and have great comments, even when they're yelling at me. They're awesome. I love to be able to get into a conversation about it. So let's continue as the season begins to get on there on Reddit. And also, don't forget, though, at our website, we have terrific articles every day with some of the best contributors around on the NBA. And my podcast and Snotty Drippin's podcast as well, in the same umbrella, is also fantastic. Really great stuff. We got really good NBA insiders with really cool information. I'm starting to get some more NBA players on there as well. And those are kind of the conversations you're going to want to hear, because we're talking about little stuff like what it's like to be on the court when you're trying to run a pick and roll and you got Dwight Howard sinking back and guarding you, that kind of stuff. It's really neat. So don't miss any of that. Without further ado, though, I guess what I'm going to try and do here is reload the AMA page and just start going through all the comments sorted by however they've been rated, best to worst. So I guess I'm going to try and get through as many of these as possible. So here we go. Are you ready? The first one we have on top here is by Incoherent and Dumb, and he asks, or she, unclear, but let's pretend everyone's a he for now. I apologize, women, ladies. If you could choose one play for intramural basketball for a team to run to dice up teams, which would you choose? Well, that's a great question, and I would have to go with my obsession, horns. Triangle would be too complicated, but horns. When I coached the team for the ESPN thing for $1 million, I had 4 practices, and I was able to install horns pretty well, and they ran it really nicely. In a very short time, they picked it up. You get a lot of great high post action. You can dribble the ball over to the wing and do some high post splits. It's a lot of stuff to get there, and it opens the basket area for you. Most likely in intramural, you're not going to have like traditional big men so much. So those guys can get out from the elbow to the wing and move. So really great stuff. So I would recommend horns. I've done a lot of videos about that, so you can check that out. Let's go to Iladila. What's your safe and dark horse pick for Rookie of the Year? I would have to say the safe pick is probably Okafor. He's going to get a lot of time and probably get some good numbers. The dark horse pick, I mean, Moutier is also in that same realm because he's going to get a lot of playing time and amass some stats. I don't know how effective he's going to be. We'll find out pretty quick. But I think that the dark horse for me might be Stanley Johnson. He's a really good player. That said, Marcus Morris did pretty well, so he might end up, limiting those minutes. But I have a feeling that Stanley Johnson's going to have a nice year and probably be in the top, 3 or 4 of the voting. And then who knows if he goes from there? Maybe he can jump in there. Let's see here. So Vincent Chops says, "Hi, I have a couple of questions. What can Andrew Wiggins do to make the next leap? Does he have any current skill that he can easily develop into an elite skill?" And you know what? Let's do this because we have some good questions here. Let me share the screen here, and we could zoom in on these questions a little bit better so we can all enjoy them. And we can get a little love to who is posting from us. So can you read that? It looks like it should be big enough, right? So here we are. What can Andrew Wiggins do to make the next leap? Well, I think he needs more experience, get a little bit more aggressive at times. The one skill that I love is his spin move into the lane is devastating. He's really quick, and he's got great center of gravity for that move. So that's a great go-to move he has. I know he can post up a little bit too, so he's going to be a tough player, one of the top players in the NBA for a lot of years. So he just needs to continue to develop. I don't know if he's got that killer instinct to make him, a top 5 player in the league, and that's okay. Not everyone's born with that, and it's not easy to develop. But I think he can end up still with. He has so much raw talent that he'll be, a top 10 player easily. How much do you believe in Hassan Whiteside? There might be some skepticism that he's just good stats. Oh, I think he is terrific. I know it's small sample size, but whenever I've watched those games, I've been really impressed with his defense. He makes the game much more difficult for the other team, without question. Not only when he's blocking shots, but they have to be aware of him, and it changes the complexion. And you know what? He can catch the ball. He's got some nice moves down low in the post. So, you're talking about a guy like him versus Gobert, and I would take Whiteside because Gobert doesn't have the offensive skill, and it's not even close when you look at it on that side. So that's what I'd go with there. Let's get to 5 line. Do you think any Eastern teams have a chance to eliminate Cleveland and go to the finals? I think the Bulls. I've been saying that for we saw that last night a little bit, even though the Cavs are still shorthanded without Kyrie. You can argue that the Bulls are still shorthanded because Derrick Rose is playing with double vision. So I think that the Bulls have the bodies to match up really well with them and give them a really good series. Remember, they almost had that series last year locked up, right, with Kyrie. The Bulls were, 1 3-point shot away from taking pretty much a commanding lead to win that series. So I think it's still there. The biggest issue that Hoiberg is going to have is to figure out what lineups to play with who. He wants to go offensive. I get it. But you know what? He's going to have to find a little bit better mix, I think, between having a good offensive team and a good defensive team, especially when they're going to get hammered on the offensive boards by a team like Cleveland with Mirotic and Pau down there. It's really a problem they're going to have to solve somehow. SJJ. Oh, and then parental guidance 13. I don't think Indiana is there at that level, but I do like what they did, and I think that they're going to pose some problems for some teams. SJJ asks, hey, Coach Nick, what pieces of technology do you think are revolutionizing coaching? Great question. Obviously, the whole the whole Sport View motion tracking thing is really big, but we haven't quite figured out how to best use it. And you know what? I'm realizing that I'm probably not screen sharing. There we go. Sorry about that. I keep forgetting that this new screen sharing thing, I have to press one more button to screen share. Here we go. So here we are. SHA. So the question is what technology? I think that obviously the motion tracking is huge. Also, when you're able to measure sweat and heart rate and all those things they're wearing now, I've seen those in practices for NBA teams. That's going to be really big because you're going to find out now when they're tired without having to ask them or hope that they'll tell you. So that's a big thing. Also, let's see here. You know what I'm going to do here while we're talking? I'm just going to tweet out this link to make sure everyone knows that we're here and that they can join us. Join us live. Anyhow, the other thing that's really big is that I want to make clear, I think it's really cool, is these virtual reality glasses, okay? What I think is going to be really neat is when you're going to film yourself with these glasses or a point of view shooting and making baskets. And you can edit that so it's only makes. And so before a game, you can put these glasses on and literally relive yourself making shots, making free throws, making shots. And I believe that will be as important, if not more, than when you go out on the court for an hour before the game to shoot your shots. I honestly believe that's going to be part of a normal routine for most players for that visualization of seeing the shots go in. I would actually think it's even more important for guys coming off the bench because those guys, it's really hard to get warm and get your shots, off of without any rhythm going to begin the game. So they're going to need every little edge they can get to become more effective in their roles. So I think that being able to visualize with those virtual reality stuff is going to be key. Let's go back to our screen share and see what we have here. Dad Spaghetti says, oh, I got to present to everybody. There we go. Thanks for stopping by. We got a glimpse of the potential of a Gasol-Mirotic front court last night. So the takeaways. Yeah, I mean, certainly Mirotic was hitting threes, and Gasol did not look good at all. They kind of got stuck in their offense. They couldn't progress to the third or fourth pass and swing the ball, which is where Gasol would be able to float down to the post like I showed in our breakdown. And they got destroyed on the defensive boards. Cleveland was getting offensive rebounds left and right. And you saw as soon as the Bulls were able to stop that from happening, they won going away because they were down. I got to look at the splits there, but they must have outscored them after that initial push by significant numbers simply by getting more defensive rebounds. So it's a good thing that Hoiberg is going to be able to go through and look at the lineups. Fevers Mirrors asks, what is your general opinion on Brad Stevens? I think he's one of the best coaches around. He gives the Celtics on a nightly basis a huge advantage. Do I think his coaching has pushed the Celtics past the level? Absolutely. He is giving them the whole key for coaching, in my mind, is teaching your players to play up. And what I mean by that is play up to the competition. So when I was coaching my teams and we would make a play and it would go win, I would say, okay, that's good, but that's not going to beat Taft or someone in our league who was much better. And you needed to condition them to know to strive for better and to make even better plays and more efficient plays. And without question, when you're able to teach a team to do that and not be satisfied with the result, then they can actually compete at a higher level than they would normally be, than where their level would be. And that's all coaching is a lot of the time. And that's what Brad Stevens does without question. He makes them competitive when they're not necessarily should be. And that's it's great to watch. Let's see here. We have the Chan Man 17. Let's see. Who are your favorites to win the East and the West? Why? So I'm crazy because I keep saying the Rockets are the favorite to get to the finals. I think what they did with Ty Lawson is going to make James Harden even better than he was, which is already awesome, and takes a lot of pressure off of them. And this makes their bench better with Beverly coming off the bench. They have a lot of pieces. I like the way they play, and they understand how to generate efficient shots. So I'm in it with them, and they also showed that they don't give up, they don't quit, even when James Harden wasn't playing well. They still came back and took that series from the Clippers. So they're a tough-minded team. I know that people will complain about Dwight Howard not being serious, but listen, the guy just makes plays, and that's what you need from that position. Let's see. How often do I go on Art Reddit? You know what? I don't. Oh, and so the East. My pick is Chicago. I think Hoiberg is going to figure it out throughout the season and what the best lineups are together. And once he does that, I think they're going to be a real tough foe for the Cavs. And I think that'll be an awesome finals. Finally, what is your go-to sandwich? I try not to eat bread that much these days. So what would be my go-to sandwich, though? Probably some sort of chicken breast. I mean, I was at Subway and I got a chicken breast on the Italian herbs and cheese. So brought to you by Subway. Maybe we'll get them on the show to sponsor. So that's my sandwich, I guess. I'm just partial towards, what do I go? Chipotle, half a scoop of the brown rice, and then the chicken and the fajitas. Here comes Justice asks, how do you think you are able to upload 60 frames per second breakdown videos this season? Yeah, I suppose it kind of depends. I usually doing it depending on how fast I'm trying to get these things done and where I get my footage. It's interesting though. I wonder why you want 60 frames as opposed to just nice 720p, footage. But there you go. Holla at your girl. Is the lack of 3-point shooting going to be a disadvantage for the Spurs? I'm not convinced that 3-point shooting is the end-all, be-all. I am convinced that there are teams that could win a championship without emphasizing the 3-point shot. I understand that every good team, as we're going farther, and you look at the numbers, and they all are doing it that way. But I think that Memphis could do it the way they're doing it. And if the Spurs don't have as many 3-point shooters this year because they lost Bellinelli, and guess who else are they missing then? Bellinelli, because the other guys left that were like Splitter and Baines aren't 3-point shooters. But, they have Patty Mills, right? Manu can nail a three every now and then. They certainly have Danny Green, who's great, and they are hoping Kawhi keeps improving there. So I'm not so sure they don't have it as much. The Jimmer experiment was kind of depressing to me. I thought he would have been a great fit there and would have really worked, but what are you going to do? Let me just check over here on Twitter, make sure everything is looking good, everyone's here. Any issues you have, let me know. Send me a tweet. I'm not sure I'm able to see the comments if you're doing it on YouTube, but anyhow, let's keep going. Let's see here. Let me share the screen here. And we have now HNJ123. What do you think about Porzingis' future in the league, and what can Knicks fans expect from him this year? I like what I see. He makes plays. He's very mobile. He's got a nice-looking shot. I would expect that to go in at least average 3-point levels. And at that height, it makes it really tough. So I would anticipate him having a typical rookie year for a big man. Up and down. He's going to have some really good moments. He'll have some moments where he looks bad and young. But I like that pick. I think that he's got the potential to be a really good player, the kind of guy that makes it really tough, like a Dirk. So, I think that was a good pick. I'm behind it. Eags Rock 20. Hey, Coach, thanks for doing this. My pleasure. Would you ever have an interest in becoming an NBA coach or assistant? Absolutely. Obviously it would be an assistant, I suppose, to start. But those are really, really tough jobs to get. And B, I'm not a 25-year-old anymore that's ready to work, 200 hours in a week. And that's a problem with my family. So I don't really know what I would do. Would I up and move to Detroit and become an assistant on, Coach Van Gundy's bench? It would just be a really tough thing to figure out how to make that work, leaving my family behind. So I don't really know. I would be happy working in the summers with NBA guys, which I started to do a little bit, and just prepare custom-made workouts for them based on what they do in the offense. I think that's really exciting stuff, and then I can do what I'm doing now during the year. Crail123 asks, hey, Coach, what do you think about the Pistons and the team at SandmanCanio? Oh, I love it. I watched a few minutes last night, and it was really great. Spacing, the ball was moving, and I actually missed the part where they really took off and got a bigger lead. So I think that Drummond, I'm troubled with Drummond's offensive game. His hands are not great. He really doesn't have a good touch. But maybe it doesn't matter because he can run the pick and roll and get lobs and finish maybe on putbacks. That might be enough for them. And they absolutely have all the potential in the world. Coach Van Gundy is a great coach. I was a manager at Wisconsin when he was an assistant, so I spent a lot of time around him, and I think he's just a great guy, great coach. If you saw our interview or watched our podcast or listened to our podcast with Spencer Dinwiddie, he had some nice things to say, and I think that they have a really good thing going there. And this is all spurned from cutting J.R. Smith and changing the culture around there. Those guys are really it looks like they're buying in. I really like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's shot, and I think that Jody Meeks is the hop guy. What's not to love? So everything is going up for them. I anticipate them being a real factor, sooner than later. Let's see here. D Flux asks, what do you think of Cleveland's development defensively? I feel they've made great leaps in improving on their strengths and hiding the weaknesses. Let's see here. It's hard to know. I got to see them completely healthy, with Shumpert, because he's going to really help them defensively. But, yeah, that won't be their issue. I think that they're going to be a juggernaut and a really tough team. And the only team I can see that matches up as well with them would be Chicago. So they're right there. And they have all the components they need. It's just up to Coach Blatt to manage the minutes and keep everybody happy. EMP time. Hey, Coach Nick, a huge fan of your work. You already posted a video on your optimism in the Lakers, young trio of Clarkson, Randall, and Russell. I'm predicting the Lakers are going to win between 30 and 35 games. It might actually be a little bit too optimistic. They're young. They're not deep. And, it's the West. So it might be 30 would be the high water mark. But I'm really up on those three guys. And I think within the next 2 years, they're going to be serious players in the Western Conference. Only because with those three, I have to imagine they're going to add another piece or two that are solid or good. And we'll see how that goes. But they'll be better than last year. That's for sure. No Way Greg asks, which rookie has a skill set best suited for success both in their team system and in the NBA in general? Which rookie? Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I think we talked a little bit about, a guy like Okafor. It looks like they're going to be able to bend their system to get him touches and be a post-up player. Moutier will fit in pretty nicely in Denver with what they're doing, especially because they're going to accommodate him to make it work. I already talked about Stanley Johnson. Who else is jumping out at me? I got to think about that. It's a good question. I don't know. But let's do the follow-up question, which is, how many MVPs will Kristaps Porzingis win? All the MVPs. I don't know. I don't know if he's that kind of guy. We're going to have to really see what happens tonight and then throughout the next, several games to see if he's one of those guys like Hazonia who's not intimidated, or if he's going to shrink a little bit and if that's going to be an issue. Doesn't mean he can't get there eventually, but we shall see. Blueberry, which new addition do you think will make the biggest impact on his teams in terms of decision-making and B-ball IQ? Okay, wow. Boy, which new addition? Probably like LaMarcus Aldridge has to be top of that list as far as, a guy that's a new addition to a team that already has a high B-ball IQ. What other new additions are we going to talk about here that are big for them or for anybody? Let's think here. I got to think about that. I got to go through all the new additions and kind of pick it out. Sorry, I'm a little prepared for that question, but Aldridge is not a bad answer. Marius Lepescas asks, what would be your ideal suggestion for a Timberwolves head coach based on their talent and organizational goals? Oh, okay. Young team, a lot of athletic ability. I mean, Mike D'Antoni would be really fun. I think he might be perfect for them. Obviously he would need a good defensive-minded coach. But, that's a guy who would be really fun, and that would open it up for everybody. I got to kind of go study what the Timberwolves are doing on offense this year. I've been so busy that I haven't had a chance to peep at them yet. But I'm looking forward to it without question. So let's see here. I'm just looking for really quickly at the chat here on YouTube to make sure everything is going well here. Pop out the chat. Here we go. Awesome. Everything looks good. So let's get back to our questions, shall we? And I'm sorry about the messy bookmarks. I'll have to clean those up. Let me get back to the AMA here. Oh, let me go back here. Here we go. On a scale of 1 to 10, Lightbulb17 asks, how much do I hate Westbrook? It's a good question. Hate is a strong word. Do I hate him? It's frustrating, I think, is really the key here. Westbrook frustrates me to no end. And I think the biggest reason why he frustrates me is because of how good he is and how he can be. And yet also there is this also the frustration that everybody wants to hold him up so high when the biggest issue I think I had, and I might actually do a video on this, is when you look at his turnovers and just look at how he turns it over. Because listen, Chris Paul turns it over. Mike Conley turns it over. All the great point guards. Oh my goodness, who else am I missing here besides Russ? Who's the other guy I'm always talking about? My mind is completely blanking. It must be the bright lights of this channel, of the show. Chris Paul. Who are the other guys I love? Wow, this is embarrassing. Anyway, the point is, when you watch those guys play, they don't make the kind of turnovers that he does, where it's like he just doesn't value the possession. He just throws the ball to the other team, almost like he's doing it on purpose. It's just so frustrating, and that's not what a point guard should do. So I've been trying to advocate for a new position for him. Let's just not call him a point guard. Let's call him anything else, power guard, what people were saying. I don't know, but you just can't be considered when you shoot. And also he shoots a lot of threes at a very low percentage, indicating to me just bad decision making. So that's what frustrates me about it, and where he could be so much better, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And so there are moments when we see it, but it's not consistent. So it's just frustrating to see. That's really where it comes down to is the way he runs his team. He's not always accurate on his passes. He is good sometimes, but like a lot of times it's just like way off, and the guy will miss the shot because he's got to reach for the pass. So, with things like that, I don't really see anything different from him this year, which is also a little frustrating. I was hoping to see maybe some improvement. There is some notion of maybe his shot is a little bit better. He's swaying a little bit more and not so rigid straight up and down. But again, that's inconsistent as well. And then a guy that plays with that much rage just kind of rubs me wrong. And that's just me. It's maybe aesthetics, and I'll admit that it could just very well be that. But those are the things that drive me nuts about him. And, it's okay. It's a conversation. I love getting into it. WJBC asks, let's go back to our screen share so we can see, everyone can see these questions. Did I do that one? Is that the right one? Yes. WJBC, what does IIRC mean again? In as much as I can tell. I forgot what that means. I thought you didn't like Spoelstra using the 1-in, 4-out offensive set with Miami when James was there, but you praised Hoiberg, and it seems like that's one of his favorite sets. Well, 4-out is different. It means a lot of different things. As far as, 4-out could simply just be, you only have 4 guys on the perimeter and 1 guy who stays sort of in all the time. What I criticized of Spoelstra was the stagnant 4-out, where they just kind of stand around and wait for each other to sort of drive and kick, where when you see what Hoiberg is doing, they're doing weaves across the top and reverse action and pin downs. They're getting all sorts of great action out of that spread. And that's the difference. Hopefully that makes sense. Maybe I should do a breakdown of that. But obviously the advantages of 4-out is it spreads the defense out so far that it's hard for them to defend. You're forcing closeouts all the time. And remember, the best part about an offense is when you can force a closeout and attack it. I see what Miami tries to do in that respect, but it's a one-on-one attempt to then drag or force a rotation, whereas With the Bulls, they're not relying on a one-on-one to sort of break it down. They're relying on dribble pitch and pin downs and movement to spread the defense out and then break them down. I think it's much better and much easier. Han Solo Headbag. Hey, Coach Nick, what do you think the biggest fundamental is that you see lacking? I mean, footwork in general tends to be lacking in a lot of players. And you can see that on defense a lot, sort of wasted steps to get going quickly in one direction. Also, I think maybe the worst thing I also see is getting around ball screens. I don't know. I did a breakdown on that, and I feel like I need to get an NBA player out on the court with me to really go over it, because preferably CP3, because no one knows how to do it correctly. They run into the screen. They get hung up on the screen. It's not lack of effort. It's just lack of footwork and properly understanding how to get around those. And that's a really big one. Shooting, for the most part, you've seen all of I'm sure, our breakdown videos on shooting and what's important about that. But most of the guys are turning. Most of the guys are swaying. We see most guys dipping. So that's all good, for the most part. So I would say that getting around the screens and the footwork on defense are the big ones. Leo Rubio asks, thanks. Thank you. My question is, between Sacramento, Utah, and Phoenix, who will end up with the best record and who will have the worst? Great question. I don't know if I'm sold on Utah all of a sudden. I thought that they were going to be right in the mix there. But I don't know. I feel like there's something missing there. The ingredients are there. They just haven't stirred them together quite there. Sacramento is intriguing, but I just can't see it. I think that there's a real toxic situation there with the coach and DeMarcus Cousins, and that might hold them back as well. And then Phoenix seems to have just been a weird chemistry experiment gone wrong. So I would say, in order, top to bottom, Utah, Utah, and then maybe like Sacramento and then Phoenix. And they might be razor thin and really close together, but those are my picks. Great question. I made this, whatever his name is. How far do you think the Spurs will go this year, and how will they incorporate LaMarcus Aldridge into their offense? So, they've been incorporating him nicely. They've been getting him a lot of post-ups, and they're curling off of him, and then to get him open on those post-ups where he'll set a screen and then pivot and open. And he's also popping out. So he's been fitting in nicely, I think, with what they want to do with their offense and him. It might take some more time, though, to get that smoother. But they are legitimate contenders to get to the conference finals. I guess I'm picking Houston for right now, but whenever anybody forgets about the Spurs, there they go, and they go win the championship. Rip City asks, who is the team, or I'm sorry, Zoom Oregon asks, who's the team you think will have the most improved offense this season? I love the Bulls. Love what they're doing. I showed what OKC was doing, and there's a little bit there to be happy about. But again, it's not enough. They barely ran the good sets I saw hardly at all. So that's definitely one thing. I like what Washington's doing. Their offense is a little bit more spaced out, more dribble pitch across the top. They're not going to play Gortat and Nene together as much, if at all, which I think works for them. So I would look for either the Washington to be another good team. Now they probably were already highly ranked. I got to check their ranking, but I would say they're going to have a better year on offense. Let's see. JGV Jed asks, do you think all the teams in the East that make the playoffs this year are above 500? Great question. Are they going to get to 42 wins or not? I would like to think so, yes. I would like to think that the bottom part of there is going to be good enough to be 500. So I will go yes. Mike Parrott asks, how far do you see Chicago rising or falling in the offensive rankings? Yeah, they're rising. They should go up. They should be really good. The offense won't be the issue for them. I would say top 5. And you're welcome. Kazakh Dog of Space asks, hey, Nick, I love the breakdowns. Thank you. My question is, which rookies do you see the best fit? Okay, so I think I addressed this. And then I kind of talked about, Stanley Johnson's going to be my big surprise. I got to go through the definitive rookie list. Oh, I love Bobby Portis. Speaking of the next question, though, I don't think he's going to play much, unfortunately, but he was terrific in the preseason. What NBA buzzwords, trends will you see in the next few years, like small ball and spacing now? Oh, wow. Gosh. I think that another buzzword is going to be, I call it reverse action, but whatever they're going to call it, about swinging the ball, getting at least one reversal. So maybe reversal will be the word they're going to hear. I think we're going to start seeing the advanced analytics show us that when the ball reverses one time at least, you get a huge bump in your field goal percentage and effectiveness and efficiency. So I think teams are going to start measuring that more. Who are your 5, 6, 7, and 8 seeds in the East this season? Oh, good question. Let me take a quick peek there at the divisions here. So my 5th, 6th, 7th in the East. Let's see here. Well, it's a good question. Let's go through the whole East then, shall we? I wonder if I can see this in a divisional thing. Well, okay. So we know that it's going to be Cleveland and Chicago at the very top. Then we're going to go. I would say the Wizards are behind them in Atlanta. That's 4. Then Miami probably 5th. You got Boston in there too, either 5th or 6th. So Boston, Miami is 5th and 6th. And then you go. I think Detroit's going to be there in that like 7th or 6th or 7th spot. The Knicks could easily get to the 8th spot there as well. And guess what? I'm forgetting Toronto. I'm not sold on Toronto. I think they'll be, maybe I think they can get a home court advantage for the first round, like fourth spot maybe. So that pushes everybody else down. So you're looking at, I didn't even mention Milwaukee either. Wow, the Eastern Conference is better, and also Indiana. Gosh, that's tough. I don't know. I'm going to have to go with. I would imagine Miami's going to be there in that, in one of those 5th through 8th spots. I think Detroit's going to be there. I think Milwaukee's going to be there. So that kind of freezes out teams like New York, and then Boston's going to have to be there. So I'm not sure exactly what order that's going to be, but that means that New York doesn't make it again. And I think, did I get Toronto on that 4th spot? So someone's going to be disappointed there, and it could very well be Indiana. They might end up dropping out as well, not quite getting over the hump. But I like what they're doing so far. All right, let's get on to our next question here. Wow. Princess Blue Pie asks, are the Hawks still a top 3 team in the East? I think so. I think they still have the parts. They still have the offense it's a great regular season offense. If they stay healthy, they added Splitter. They just got to figure out the rotations a little bit. But yeah, they're top 3. Umbricon asks, longtime fan, thanks. What do you predict will happen when the Clippers roll out a pseudo small ball lineup with Smooth at the 4 and Blake at the 5? Whatever Blake's footwork issues are, he's still very effective down there in the post, which kind of makes me think, what do I know? I like Blake at the 5. They did it, and it seemed like it was very viable for them. So, yeah, I like that. And if Smith is going to, play well and shoot, make his shots, then great, he's viable. And if he's not, then he's a problem. But for sure, they should use it. They should look at it at times. I love it. Finally, what do you think of Doc's refusal to stagger CP3's and Blake's minutes so that one of them is on the court? Yeah, is that his refusal, or are they just sort of not doing it? I don't know. But absolutely, I think each of those guys should get their own time on the court. Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen got to split that up and get their own time as well. So without question, it just makes them better. Let them learn how to be without each other. GSN1 PA360. Hey, Coach, thanks for time. No problem. Who do you think will be the best player to not make the All-Star team this year? Oh my goodness gracious sakes alive! That's not an easy question. Gosh, it's probably going to be a point guard because there's so many of those, right? And so you go like Conley, right? He keeps getting, gets the short on the stick sometimes. That might be who I go with. I don't know. That's not easy. Barncore, you are right. It's not easy. Hey, Coach, how do you think the Raptors will use their power forwards this year? If Scully is starting, do you think he will be used out of the post or used as a jump shooter like how Indiana used him? Yeah, I got to study them a little bit more because I haven't gotten the chance to see too much of the Raptors yet. So I would imagine, everyone's kind of going small, so they're probably going to try and, get DeMarre Carroll in there often. And then I have a feeling that, Scola is going to bounce from the post to the, the mid-range area and do his thing. They're going to use him like Indiana did. And he'll be effective. He's a good player. And speaking of good footwork, he's got it. So that's how I see it. I think they're going to probably end up going smaller as much as they go big. They don't have Amir Johnson anymore, and so that's an interesting thing. What they're going to have, Valanciunas. Are they going to go him and Scola? We'll have to check that out and keep our eye out for it. Brian, 2714 says, what teams are you most excited to watch this season, and who do you think will win the championship? So I'm most excited to watch, I want to see the Bulls with their new offense. I want to see the Rockets with Lawson. I love watching the Warriors. The last night was a real fun thing. Spurs are always great to watch. I'm anxious to see the Knicks play with the triangle with actual NBA players this year. There's a lot of good teams. Hawks are fun to watch. We're evolving to the point where, from a coach's standpoint, there's a lot of great stuff to look at. Let's see. Odorlads asks, hey, I've been having a lot of problems with my ankles lately. You know what I discovered about ankles? This is a great question, is that a lot of NBA guys are saying that some of the keys to the ankles are the hips. And when your hips are really tight, your ankles get injured. And if you can understand why, depending on how you run, if your hips are tight, you could be running on the outside of your feet. And that puts a lot of stress on your ankles. And any little bit of accidental movement, whatever, you can roll them very easily. So what people have been saying is that by opening your hips, which is a good idea anyway, because you need that to be in a good basketball position, you can start to understand how to keep your feet flatter on the ground. Now, we've talked about curling your toes a lot. And I have videos with Chung who shows us about how to curl your toes. It locks the ankle so you don't roll it over. You literally will fall over before you roll your ankle, which is much more preferable to learn how to fall down and then pop right back up and you're right back in it than rolling that ankle. So that's a real key here, is the toes being curled engages the glutes and also allows you to lock the ankle into a good position. But if your hips are too tight, it forces you to run on the outside edge of your foot, and that's going to be really bad news for ankles. I know my hips are really tight, and I tore my ankles up in high school. I had no notion of hips or anything else being connected to that. Let's keep sharing. Here we go. Bill B. Dilby asks, do you think the Jazz's #1 defense after the All-Star break last year will translate to this season? I was a little bit concerned, by the way, with Gobert getting manhandled a little bit in the preseason and in the FIBA as well, getting pushed around. Guys were getting rebounds and scoring over him. Of course, Gobert favorited those tweets, so he's out there in that conversation somehow. But I think that, I would have to imagine it should keep translating. There's no reason to think there was a long enough sample that they'll be able to maintain some semblance of that defense and be very good. And if their offense improves, remember, that also helps their defense to some degree. St. Canucks asks, let's see here, what is your championship prediction? Well, I was saying Bulls-Rockets for now, and maybe the Rockets win it. Who do you think are the 5 best players in the NBA? Well, that's not, that's pretty clear, I would imagine. Anthony Davis, LeBron James, James Harden, Steph Curry, and in no order, and then Kevin Durant. I don't know exactly who I'd put in which order, but that's my answer. Do you think Hoiberg and Donovan are improvements over their predecessors? I think Hoiberg is, provided he figures out the right lineups to improve the defense enough to get his good offensive stuff. So I think it will be an improvement. Plus, it just might help to get a different voice in there. They might have gotten tired of Thibodeau, and had he stayed on, he just might have kept going downhill. Donovan, I've seen a little bit of improvement in terms of what I've seen. I talked about in the offense, but not enough yet. It won't matter. They're going to be dominating with those 2 guys being so overwhelming talent-wise. But I think he's an improvement. We'll just see how much. Let's see here. Rank these players based on how good you think they will be in their prime. Wiggins, Antetokounmpo, Towns, D'Angelo Russell, and okay, let's see here. So I would imagine in their primes, I would go. I might go Towns, Wiggins, Antetokounmpo, and Russell. That's what I'm thinking now. Unless Russell does something this year that changes my opinion. Right now, I think he's fine, but I don't know if he's going to be the end all. Let's see here. Do you ever think you will bring back the historic breakdowns? Yes, I cannot believe I didn't get enough of those done. I have one kind of half prep I got to finish, so I'll try and get it out if I can in the regular season, but for sure, that's a terrible oversight by me. Warriors writer, Coach, what are your thoughts on the trend with floor spacing big men? If most of the league starts trending that way, do you think we'll start to see a regression towards more teams using more post-adept big men? Yeah. I think what we're seeing is, more and more of these big guys are going to start playing out. And you know what? I don't mind it so much. I mean, imagine if you were a big man back in the day. all you did was run from block to block to block to block and getting hammered and smashed and pushed and punched all game long, kind of like a lineman in football, right? And it's boring, right? At some point, all you do is screen the ball and roll, screen the ball, roll. The guys out on the perimeter, they get to cut, they get to catch, they get to break guys down and shoot out from the outside. So I have no doubt we're continuing to see that trend. However, the post cannot go away, because when you get the ball to either the high post or the low post, it's a devastating spot to get the ball. You don't need to shoot it from there, but when you get it there and the defense slides closer and they turn their heads, that's what opens up good shots. Remember, a pass coming from the low post out to the three-pointer is the best shot you want. The guy's already facing the basket. It's an easier shot. And that's why we have to maintain the notion of throwing it to the post. Whether we see guys scoring down there as much in the future is another debate. Probably we see that less, but you still need that positioning there. So that's a great question. Let's go back to our screen share for everybody. All righty. How do you like the way Mirotic was used? Oh, I'm sorry. How confident are you in the Spurs' chances this year? That's a foul, bro. I don't know. I'm putting them behind probably. I'm probably third in line behind maybe the Rockets and the Warriors. Mr. Patiers asks, how do you like the way Mirotic was used yesterday versus the Cavs? I thought he did really well, except for the fact that he couldn't get any rebounds. But he was getting open three-point shots, and that worked well for him. So I think that they're on their way. And then McDermott looked awesome in the little time he got. Again, I think he's going to have a really good year. And it's too bad that he kind of lost his rookie year like he did, but he's going to make up for it. McB25, what are some things you look at when evaluating coaches at any level? Is there anything you feel like our average NBA fan should try to pay closer attention to when judging coaches? And finally, do you think it is essential to have at least a basic understanding of a coaching system in order to give them a fair assessment? Yes. I mean, listen, it might not even be fair then if you don't know what's going on in the locker room. And I kind of just sort of accepted the fact that as an NBA coach, you acknowledge that people like me are going to criticize you to no end, even without all the information, right? So some guy might have a little tweak of something they don't want to talk about, and they don't play him. And next thing you know, we're criticizing him for not using that guy, right? Or there could be a whole lot of reasons. And that just sort of goes with the territory, unfortunately. As far as evaluating coaches, I mean, certainly one thing is out of timeouts is not a bad way. He's out there with a clipboard, and as soon as they go out there, can they execute it, and is it a good set or not? That's a good thing about it. I think maybe the way the players behave is somewhat of a good indication. I'm not really liking the way the Clippers complain to the refs. Even in the preseason, it was pretty bad in the game or two I watched. Doc Rivers is also, kind of bad at it. Bad at it. Maybe he thinks he benefits from it, but he's just, it's a real constant complaint. And I just feel like I'm troubled by that because I feel like the players begin to do that, and it takes away from their concentration on the game. So when you look at a guy like Brad Stevens, who's not very ruffled, at least as far as I go, that's who I would try and emulate. Tarek619, hey, Coach, what do you think of the Spurs and their new acquisitions? I think they're going to mesh really well. They're going to be very tough. Maybe they have a little less spacing. Maybe they don't. I mean, spacing still is there with West, and Aldridge can bring you out, and Aldridge is going to start shooting more threes. So, I'm more worried about Tony Parker and how he's going to look. So that's the guy who you need to keep your eye on, because if he can give them, some version of Tony Parker, then they're going to be championship material. Divine Shade asks, what are some big problems that most young athletes don't recognize in their basketball game? Any good ideas of how to work on them? Let's see. It's a good question. I think that the biggest issue that the young athletes have is the change of speed. They might not understand exactly like how they go the same speed all the time, and that makes them easier to guard. So even like a guy like Russell Westbrook doesn't really have a lot of change in direction, a change of pace. He does a little bit, but then you go watch like Steph Curry, and he had an inside-out hesitation move that blew right by Perkins. Okay, it was Perkins, but still. It was so beautiful because it's like fast, slow, up, downs, fast, and he just left them in the dust. And those are the subtle nuances that are hard to teach a young kid who just wants to go crazy fast all the time, right? In his mind, he's going hard. Hard is good, but you got to be a little bit more smart about it as you progress into your levels of basketball. And as players get better, you need to learn how to change pace. And that's what I used to harp on quite a bit when I was coaching my high school program, was just teaching them how to do it and then accentuating it as much as I could. All righty. This is a great AMA, guys. Really great questions. I'm kind of think we'll push this for another, like, I don't know, 15 minutes. We'll go for a good hour. And then what I also promise to do is I'll answer the questions if I didn't get to them here in writing. What are the fundamentals of the pick and roll as the big man? Screen setting, rolling, footwork, and such. Also, who are some of the non-high scoring bigs over the last few seasons who exhibit these fundamentals? So the fundamentals, okay. Well, I mean, obviously the fundamentals of setting a screen, the footwork involved is, ideally a jump stop. You got to wait for the point guard. Hopefully the point guard waits for you to get there. We saw a whole bunch of illegal screens last night because the point guard went a little early. The guy couldn't get there to get set. So obviously, the biggest issue, and we showed this in our last encore demo of by Fast Model on the dribble pitch. When you pitched it, you want your inside foot to pivot so that the guy's on your back. I'll have to kind of show that in a drill. But basically, I wonder if I can do this with you guys watching. Should we try this? This will be a little crazy. But here's the thing. I have a mic on me, but maybe I can stretch it. So if I'm setting a screen like this, okay, and the ball handler is obviously going to go this way across your screen, right? What I have to do now is my inside foot with the basket's this way is the right foot, and I must pivot like this, okay? Pivot where I'm actually going backwards away to keep, if they switch it and my man goes this way to where the point guard is, and the point guard's got to get in front of me, if my back gets on him, I get him on my back, he can't get in front of me really easily. So that's a real key to footwork. I see so many guys, though, they will screen and then they will just turn this way. And that lets the guy get right underneath them and take away any kind of roll pass. And that's a real big fundamental. It's a problem that, it seems easy, but we see a lot of guys not do it. Other than that, you can't have your feet too far wide. Otherwise, it's a foul, and then you're not this strong base anyway. Remember, if the guy runs into you, you want to have a strong enough base where you can hold him off. And if your feet are too wide, you might get knocked down. Now, getting knocked down isn't the worst thing because that could be a foul on the guy, but you don't want to rely on the referees to do that. You want to just set a good screen and then pivot the right way. Who are some of the non-high scoring bigs? Well, you watch guys like KG and Bogut, and those guys are the best screen setters. But, they get away with murder, right? It's murder out there. Who else is good at that? Noah gets away with murder as well. But they're good and they're effective, and eventually, the referees don't call it up every time. I'm wondering who's really, really good who just does it well. Those guys don't necessarily stand out because they're doing it right, and it's hard. Who are other good ball screeners? Like Dirk is a good ball screener too because he knows how to get open and then pop. If that's a good example, All right, let's see here. What's next? Cypress asks, who is the most underrated defender in the NBA? That's a good question. Underrated defender. Like the guys like Jimmy Butler are just great. Klay Thompson are great. Chris Paul. Like, who's a guy that always – I might have to come back to that. Let me think about that, and I'll write it in the reply. Compton NWA asks, I'm a big fan. Awesome. Question, what surprised you most about the Bulls and Cavs game last night? Let's see. What did surprise me the most? Not too much. It looks to me like LeBron, and this is the beginning of the end for LeBron. When back problems start to happen, we saw it like Scotty was a good example of that. He just never was the same. He's awesome, and he scored whatever. He was shot really well. He scored 20-some points and got 5 assists and a rebound, 10 rebounds maybe. He's doing it, but he's not as explosive as he was. He didn't have the kind of effect that he used to have on the game. Maybe that'll get better throughout the season, but the back stuff makes me really nervous. I wasn't surprised with Mirotic and Powell getting a hammer on the boards. But what I was surprised with was Tony Snell. He really surprised me. He looked great. And that's a really good sign for the Bulls if he can give them good production. Clack, clack. Hey, Coach Nick, I love your video on Hoiberg. Awesome. Thank you. How do you think it looked last night in the real NBA game? It was definitely more stagnant. Like, I think the bright lights got on and the crowd fills in. It's a real game. They got a little bit, they reverted a little bit, wasn't a little bit unsure. It'll take time, but they'll get there. Do you think their defense will be good enough to possibly get to the finals? The jury is out, right? You need to have a top 10 defense to get to the finals and win a title. That seems to be pretty clear. They weren't top 10, or maybe they were 10th last year. So they need to improve that. And to me, they have the horses. They just got to figure out which ones to play with which. Will Hoiberg do that? I think he's smart enough, and I think they understand lineup stuff, so they will. But if they can't, then no, they're not going to be. They're not making it. Favorite NBA moment you've done an analysis on? That's another good question. What would be my favorite NBA moment I've broken down? I don't know. I did do a retro breakdown on a Lakers-Celtics 80s finals game, and I had Coach Bill Burtka on with me, and he provided his insight from the bench. Like he was in that, at that game on the bench helping coach. That was a really cool thing I did that I really enjoyed. That's popped in my head. As far as recent stuff, gosh, I have to think about that. Let me get back to you on that, Soul. Sorry. Rosie. Hi, Coach Nick. There's been a lot of focus on the Bulls' new offense, but what chances should people expect from their defense? We kind of talked about it, right? I don't think they're going to be as good or as intense as they were under Thibs, but they're going to, it's just a question of finding the right five to play together that gives them a nice balance on both sides. Let's see here. When motion and pace offenses seem to gain more and more traction around the league, do you think that ISO-heavy offenses with elite athletes may take that away from us this year? No, motion and pace are here to stay, without question. I think we've seen it. It's much more exciting. It's much more fun to play for the players. So we're not going to see, a return like we used to way back in the day of ISO ball, I don't think. Of course, there's still OKC and the Cavs might still be doing that. I didn't see it as much from the Cavs last night, thank goodness. But, and then certainly end of clock situations, you're always going to see those ISOs and end of games. But I think it's here to stay. I think we're going to see more motion and more pace, which is great. Let's see here. Thank you, the short one, 520. In your opinion, what do you think is the favorite to win it all? So I'm going with, I don't know why, I'm going with the Rockets. They're not probably the favorite across the board. I'm sure either the Warriors or the Spurs are, but I don't know. I like the Rockets. Who was also the dark horse to win it all? So there's my Rockets. And then I guess the Bulls would be my dark horse on the other end of that side. JTK Basketball asks, hey, Coach Nick, thank you for your time. No problem. My question pertains to inbounds plays. Last night, the Cavs ran out of timeouts and could not properly inbound the ball. What is your opinion on the risk-reward of a play? Sometimes a perfect screen and cut can lead to a layup that makes the coach a genius, and sometimes last night happens. On the other hand, a play to inbound it automatically but not set up a shot puts criticism on the coach. Okay, great question. And I've stressed this across the board everywhere I've gone and where I've coached. The out-of-bounds play, particularly the one out of underneath your own basket, but certainly also on the sideline in front of your own basket, those are so important. And they're easy points. You should be running your out-of-bounds plays to score. 2 passes, boom, boom, bam, score. I used to force my kids. I said, listen, here's the ball here. If you don't shoot it, I'm taking you out. All right, I want you guys to run this. I want you to know that you're shooting it. I don't care if it gets blocked or anything. You're shooting the shot. You get enough of those in a game where if you really run them to get a score, especially with the baseline ones, you can give yourself an extra 8 points a game. That's the difference between winning and losing. That's the difference between blowing a team out. So the teams that just throw it in there drive me nuts because you've got to run a play, I think, for a score. It's too much of an advantage for you, especially because you know where the defense is, you know where the ball is. It's basically a post-up when it's a baseline out of bounds. So you got to take advantage. Let's see here. Let's get back to a few more here in the last 5 minutes. Futuring asks, does Taj still fit the new Bulls, especially with Portis apparently playing really good? I mean, Taj played, Portis didn't, so it seems pretty clear that he's fitting and, Taj is still there. But don't be surprised to see somebody get moved. Let's see here. Another question. What do you expect from the Spurs? We kind of talked about that. Does Aldridge's apparent need for the ball hinder Kawhi's final breakthrough? Yes, it might. Kawhi might sort of not quite get there this year because of Aldridge, and that might be okay. They might still be a better team from it. My most awkward interview, by far has to be the one I did with Rick Carlisle in 2010 when it went off the rails right from the beginning. And then it was strange, and we ended up discussing it afterwards, me and Coach Carlisle, for a little while, which was even more excruciating. So you can check it out. It's somewhere up there. you know, on one of my early videos, me and Coach Carlisle. Also, the end of Mike D'Antoni interview, when I asked him if he was in, but it was really, really loud. He couldn't hear me. So I said, "You in, Coach?" And he goes, "Huh?" So then I explained it to him. And I left it all in. It was kind of funny, but it was way awkward. TGK 2309. What do you think will be a surprise? Who do you think will be a surprise breakout player this year? Surprise. Maybe McDermott. I don't know. I have these visions of McDermott, like, you know, scoring 10 a game, which might not be that much, but it's like, considering where he came from last year, that's pretty good on a really good team. Anybody else coming to mind? You know, I don't know. I mean, I think, how about Julius Randle? I think he's going to have a great year. Mind of the ball. Carmelo Anthony, when healthy, underrated, overrated, top 10 player. I think he's kind of rated where he should be. Is he a top 10 player? Yeah, I think he's a top 10 player when he's healthy. I think he gets a lot of criticism and he gets a lot of praise, so he probably ends up being pretty right in the middle as far as where he should be rated. Is Deron a good? Is Darren Williams a good fit for Carlisle's offense? I gotta watch it. I haven't seen him. I think he's been injured a little bit, so I don't know. He's a coach's son. He should be able to do that. He did it great in Utah for a little while there. So yeah, if he can do it with Coach Sloan, he easily could do it with Coach Carlisle if he buys in. Rainbow Skull. What's the Magic's path to contention? I don't know. I mean, listen, they need to improve across the board, but they have a lot of great players. Scott Skiles should get them better, so they should be on their way. They need to shoot a little bit better with their guards. But I like Elfrid Payton. I like Oladipo. Those guys make plays. I like Vucevic. And so, you know, they're on their way. They just need to kind of continue that, and they need, you know, a tougher voice, I suppose, or something. Scott Skiles is probably that, and then they'll get there. DTC Brock asks, what were your key takeaways from the Detroit-Atlanta game last night? You know, I didn't get a chance to watch it. I was watching the other game. You know, I did see a little bit of the space that Detroit was running, which looked beautiful. But I don't understand what happened to Atlanta necessarily. I don't know why they weren't doing well. I saw, you know, Schroeder looked like he was having a really good game, but that Schroeder-Teague thing might be an issue. Schroeder wanting to start, and you know, they might move him if they feel like he's not playing as part of the team. Let's get the last questions here, and then I'll answer the rest of these guys in writing. Let's see. Jonathan Laniado asks, best record in the league, worst record in the league. Well, let's see here. The best record in the league could go to. Let's see. If the Cavs had a Kyrie, I would have thought they might do it because they're playing in the East. The Bulls are still struggling a little bit with Rose and stuff, so they might. I don't know. Let's go with I don't know. The Rockets. And the worst record in the league. Let me take a quick peek here at the teams. Who would have the worst record in the league? Probably. I would say maybe Philly does it again. You know, I don't know. They depend. I mean, are they going to tank again? Gosh, it'd be crazy if they did. But Philly might end up doing it. Anybody in the West? Gosh, the West is so good. I have it hard to picture anybody having the worst record in the league. So if it's got to be the East, it's got to be like Philly, or maybe like even Charlotte. Charlotte's got something there, but they might still struggle. Someone's got to struggle. So there's my MVP and NBA champion. So I guess I go Rockets and Harden. I don't know. I got Houston on the mind. All right, last question from Huffman Dick Kings. Sup, Coach? Sup, Huff? What is up? Thank you. What current team's offense is the biggest misuse of their talents? Oh, I think it's OKC. Even though I've seen a little bit from them, it's still not enough to me. And it could just be, again, it might be aesthetically. I just like to see pleasant offense. But when I watch that, you know, it just frustrates me. I do like a little bit of what and by the way, and the Wizards did nicely last year too. Maybe even like Toronto's offense kind of was frustrating, even though they had some nice horn stuff going on. But you know, I like movement. I like ball. I like the ball sharing. I like guys passing and cutting and moving. And so I'm not going to say that you can't get it done without those things. Just like you could get it done without shooting a lot of threes and still, you know, win a title. But just for me, aesthetically, it's like when I see all the ISO stuff, it just drives me crazy. And I'm worried that we're going to see a lot more, or too much of it on the the Thunder side. And then that begs the question, does Donovan have control over the locker room? Are they listening to him? Are they buying in? Are they half buying in? Is Durant half out the door? It's fraught with a lot of issues. So, well, fantastic AMA. Thank you guys for giving me these questions. I'll promise I'm going to go get some lunch. And I'm going to come back and I'll answer some more of these things in writing for you. And if you keep adding them, I'll go through it all the rest of the day as much as I can. Don't forget, though, our podcast is awesome. Me and Snotty Drippin do a great podcast. Our website, you have to go there. I mean, we're killing it right now, and I think we're killing it because the content is so good. Our NBA preview is still viable for a lot of teams who didn't play last night. It's a beautiful, beautiful NBA preview book, basically, that you can digital book. It's free. It's got incredible insight. It will be the most comprehensive and gorgeous-looking preview you'll ever see, guaranteed, until next year when we do it. So check that out, and we'll be doing a lot of live shows after games, so stay tuned for those. And don't forget, sports fans, at BBallBreakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You in?